Okay, so maybe you can hear me now because I forgot to put my microphone on. Sorry. Thank you. So first up, I apologize for being late. I was gobbling my dinner. Second up, I apologize, just to let you know that I do plan to be an hour and a half. That was always the point of these shows, is to never be like the 3.5, 4 hour things that we used to have. So I will stay on point as much as possible. So first up, we're going to talk about the civil war, so Rwanda or Lebanon. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, how are they going to do it? Maybe they're going to do both. So for those of you who don't know, Lebanon was all kind of done through the back door, right? So they were always very accommodating with all the different religions, and they allowed people, allowed different religions to be in the governments, and then all of a sudden the scales were tipped, right? So what we have in our civil service is we've just had the Islamophobia, right? Consultations just finished yesterday. We already have heavy rogue Muslim factions in civil service who are refusing asylum to Christians, right? We already have Muslim only political parties being there was the mayor somewhere in Birmingham who can't speak a word of English, who's just been elected, right? So we're already seeing the Lebanization of the UK, right? So we're seeing the stealth mode of overtaking the United Kingdom. And if you've never listened to Brigitte Gabrielle's, I think the first one's called Because They Hate, or is that the second one's called Because They Hate? I'm not sure. But Brigitte Gabrielle is the person who she wrote about it, and it was her personal experience of what happened in Lebanon. And so we've already got that, right? And what we had over the weekend was, epping protests, right, over the asylum hotel. And we had Antifa members bust in by the police in their riot vans and bust back out again. And that's a psyop because of the way that it's been handled. Even more so because Tommy Robinson's now going, right? So they are and have been trying to create civil war since they started boat dropping, right? So boat dropping in earnest was like 2020, right? So people who are talking about it now are just pissing me off, right? And to all those retarded people who were saying that they're not illegals, they are do you remember that whole fucking random psyop that came from the right, that they weren't illegals, they were here to protect us, they were the undercover military, some fucking bullshit. And you're just like, oh my god, you're so retarded, because you obviously haven't been paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world. So are we gonna have Lebanon? Which one's gonna win out, right? So they were talking about civil war and riots in mainstream media, so it's obviously happening like really soon, right? So we've got school holidays, and I said it would be the summer, it would be school holidays is when things really start to kick off. We've got Parliament gets shut down over the summer, we've got Trump coming, so there's going to be all of these little fireworks that could start it. We've also so are they going to do it Lebanon style, right? Are we going to have the potential peaceful overthrow, or have things now got to a tipping point where they don't have the time, right? So Lebanon took time, until they were in a position of power, legislative, like real legislative power, which I would say with the civil service are the people who kind of run the country, we probably already are. Bearing in mind, so let's just kind of like re-hone in on the fact that they're controlled as well. You know, the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, the Hindus. That it's there's a global cabal of multiple factions who are all kind of vying for control, and everybody else is the puppets, right? So the person in the civil service who is brainwashed into believing they're doing the thing, right? They're brainwashed into believing it. So we do have to be mindful that we focus our attention on the actual baddies, if you like, rather than the useful idiots, right? And that's the I can say the official terminology. That anybody who's brainwashed, right, is people who just cannot see the reality, right? So whether they're on the left or on the right, or religious or atheist, or so there's no one group, right? The only way to control the narrative is to control the entire narrative, right? Across the board. So what do I mean by Rwanda? Right, well, Rwanda was ramped up. I mean, and just so you know, the Rwandan Civil War started like in the late 1800s, right? So they were already, it was almost 100 years of fighting before what happened in 1994, right? So people don't ever really talk about the history of Rwanda, and it was Belgian, and then it was given to somebody else after the war, and it was French. Like, so they changed hands, and they were just colonized, and so it was over 100 years of fighting that was going on in Rwanda. It's perpetuated in the media that the plane going down, and on the plane was the two heads of state. So they had one Hutu. Why can't I remember the important bits of information? So the two factions, there was two heads of state. So they basically kind of divided. They had one head of state for each. They'd actually signed the peace talks that day. They'd signed the peace agreement. So it was 12 months long, stalemate. And that day they signed the peace agreement. And so it was all coming back to, it was actually to end the civil war that day. And the aeroplane was shot down, and then over the radio waves, and there'd been consistent Hutu and we've got thunderstorms going on. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to double check. I don't know why. Rwanda genocide. Let's just. I think I'm getting the two beginnings mixed up. Hutu and Tutsi. Yeah, I was saying Hutsi and Tutu. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So the Hutu and the Tutsi, right? So the Tutsi were the smaller group, the more you can call the elitist class, and they were only like made the elitist class because they were paler than the others, and that was done by the Belgians, and that was done because it was around the late 1800s. So with Darwinism and eugenics and all of that stuff, right? And then there was the Hutu, who were the kind of the farmers and the working class, right? So it was a class divide, not a race divide. It became a race divide, but it was always kind of a class divide anyway. So it was the haves against the have-nots, but they'd been using methods of electronic Jew-style warfare, right? So over the radio waves for months, this is during the peace process, for months, dehumanizing the Tutsi, calling them cockroaches, saying that they, were, and a lot of the Tutsi were Christians, right? Actually, they were the church had so there was Christians on both sides, and the the church had taken sides, right? So the church was heavily involved in pushing. If you actually kind of like track back and look into what happened in Rwanda, it's not the stuff that we initially get told. So the church are all in on wiping out the other side, right? So there's the Orthodox on one side and the non-Orthodox on the other side. So even though the church was divided and was like calling for extermination, right? It was absolutely disgusting what was going on. But on the radio waves, so we saw the same sort of propaganda that had been successfully used in Nazi Germany. You know, obviously, let's remember Nazi Germany was the practice run, was the insulated practice run. So the same sort of kind of dehumanization and demonization of the Tutsi. So the same thing that's been going on in the Western communities with regards to white people. So people haven't been paying attention, right? So it's on the TV they call white people disgusting, degenerate, like all of that is okay. So we're seeing the same thing, right? People just aren't paying attention to history. Like you don't even have to go back that fucking far, and you can see it playing out, right? This is what's meant by future proofs past. Basically it's the same fucking playbook. So what happened once the plane went down is there was a radio broadcast, and that over the radio waves they were using specific frequencies which triggered the complete insanity which ensued of almost 100 days of just genocide and mass slaughter. But bearing in mind, like hundreds of thousands of people had already been murdered on both sides over the preceding 100 years. Okay, so it did culminate in a giant slaughter. So, but that neither side were innocent in what was going on, right? So I was just kind of going back through some of my old so I was trying to organize some stuff earlier, and it was really interesting because I did a post about religion being the original method of control. And if you've been kind of like chatting with me for a while, you'll know I've said that a lot consistently. It's something that I have always believed, and why I was a fervent atheist, right? Well, one, because everybody was so fucking every religion that I looked at, like everybody was hypocritical, right? You must not do this thing, and they're the people doing the thing, right? And I can't deal with hypocrites. Regardless of what you believe, even if what you believe it turns out to be wrong, because we all make mistakes, at least go all in, right? Go all in. So I mean, you may think that I'm most anti-Christian, and it's just because I've met a lot of hypocritical Christians, right? So I mean, I know people from all religions. Actually, I say all religions. That's not true. I don't know people from all 3,000 different religions. But I have close friends with the major Abrahamic religions. And actually, growing up, I had, Sikh friends. Actually, my best friend was Sikh for many years. So the main kind of religions that I'm most likely to come into contact with. And I used to just ask him, always ask him questions. Like, I just couldn't figure it out. Why did, back then it was just like, but why do you believe in this like random thing in the sky? Right. As Matt calls them, sky pixies now, right? That's where I was. But I never saw the viciousness with regards to the treatment of others while professing to be on the right side, right? And what I mean is, and I don't know whether I've told you this story before, but one of it was my Sikh friend's grandmother passed away, and there was like 4 or 5 of us. We were girl friends, and I think we were like 13, 14. And she was really close to her grandmother. And so we were all kind of talking, and it was a really nice summer's day, and we just like happened to be at a park, because that's where you go as kids. Like back in the day, that's where you went as kids. And she was just kind of saying, my grandmother passed away, like nobody's really talking to me about it. And so she was kind of really struggling because nobody was kind of like involving her, because she was a child, right? And straight up, the Christian in the group, like hardcore Christian, and she was like newly converted, right? She wasn't Christian before. All of a sudden she found God about 12 months before this incident. She'd always been pretty atheist before then, but somehow she ended up becoming a Christian. And she just said, well, I mean, it doesn't matter anyway, because she's not going to heaven. When you're like, and I was at that point, so I was still in my hate the world stage at that point, right? So you shut off empathy because you just can't cope with all the shit that you're feeling. And even I was like, oh, that's a bit fucking harsh. Right? Me kind of like, and I've mentioned this before, if you're not born with empathy, you have to learn it, and you have to develop it as a skill. And if you experience trauma, chances are, like, if you don't have anybody to help you turn on the empathy, then that's how you make psychopaths, right? So I grew up in a loving home, so I did have some level of emotional understanding. I mean, I didn't care, like, if I hurt people. That's how I know, like 100%. I was if you want to kind of a psychopath with regards to lack of empathy with regards to other people. But even I was just like, that's a bit fucking harsh. The emotional wasn't there, but just the actual logical understanding of this girl's just said that's just wrong. So I do have a special affinity. I do have a special issue with Christians, and that doesn't mean I agree with them being slaughtered left, right, and center. I just think they should take their heads out of their asses, like, more often, right? So back to a kind of I did it was funny because I did a post about saying that again today with regards to religion, because I've said this repeatedly. The people who are going to be most hurt when all the shit hits the fan, I believe will be the people who have been so committed to the book, whatever the book is, right? So committed to whomever they've been told is the only person who's going to save them, right? They will be. So when I was kind of like hunting around for some stuff with regards to how they use frequency to fuck with us, and I'm going to play a teeny tiny little clip from, and it was uploaded in 2021, right? It wasn't recorded in 21, it was recorded in 2020, but it was uploaded. They can manage to kind of like take a lot of the stuff from YouTube before it got destroyed. But I was just kind of like chuckling to myself because after I'd kind of grabbed the clip, it was just kind of playing in the background. I was like, oh yeah, so what else was I saying back then? And some of the things I was like, oh, Katie, you got that really, really wrong. But that's okay, because we can get things wrong. And it wasn't. It was so interesting to kind of watch how what our understanding evolves with the more that we learn, and we can get stuff wrong, but it was kind of like playing, and then all of a sudden the exact words I'd said earlier this year, which was then clipped into a short, I said in 2020. So like 5 years apart, I just happened to be saying the exact same, like 200 words. So that just made me chuckle a little bit. So I'm going to play like I think it's like 2-minute clip. Yeah, 2-minute clip. And this is taken from one of the videos that got me banned from YouTube. Oh. Okay, so let me just figure this shit out. How do I make this full screen? I don't know. Yes, my sound's on. This is Channel 4 News, February the 5th, 2001. Okay, so this guy is Barry Trower, told the police commissioning body that they need to stop using the Tetra system. Okay, Tim Rifat also told the public that we need to stop using this Tetra system. And he said, so this is the transcript from Channel 4 News. So this was on mainstream TV. So the new Home Office microwave system called Tetra is to be the mainstay of British police force communications and will be placed in every major population centre. The British government is spending £2.5 billion on a 400 megahertz pulse-modulated microwave transmitter network, which broadcasts 17.6 hertz into the brains of all Britain's police and anyone living near the planned 30,000 transmitters. The first place these transmitters will be deployed is in Glastonbury. The effects of these transmitters, which entirely duplicate CIA research in optimal mind control technology, are destruction of short and long-term memory by disrupting calcium reflux from synapses due to the effect of the 17.6 hertz. That's ELF is electro... I get this wrong. Okay, so ELF is it's low frequency. So it's oh, now I see now it's gone from my mind. So I do get this wrong because I'd only just discovered, but it basically means it's the lowest kind of frequency. And so the higher the frequency, so it's on the electromagnetic frequency scale. So we have visual, what we can see in the middle, which is where you get your colors. So low frequency means non-ionizing radiation. So non-ionizing radiation means that it will interact with your atoms and it will kind of fizz them, but it doesn't fizz them powerfully enough that the electrons kind of detach. So ionizing radiation means that your atoms fizz so much that the electrons actually detach, right? So either sides of the visible electromagnetic scale, we have non-ionizing and ionizing. And the myth is that ionizing radiation is what's harmful and non-ionizing is non-harmful. So this just means like this is like so VLF is like very low frequency. ELF is also like really low frequency, but I just wanted to kind of like interject. So it means like it's like low frequency. So 17.6 hertz is what was being pumped out as part of the Tetra system, and that actually went into play in the police forces and was only swapped out 2 years ago. So since the 1990, I think it was 1994, which is like Rwanda territory, that was in play for like 20-30 years. Magnetic field, electro field, I think. I'll have to Google that. Disruption of synaptic neural networks leading to behavioral and character changes. Manic behavior followed by nervous exhaustion after use or exposure. Disruption of higher brain function leading to the so-called zombification. Enhanced suggestibility. The development of precancerous cells, which can lead to long-term tumor growth. Effects on the limbic system leading to emotional and behavioral modification. ELF frequency in the tetra system strongly affects calcium ions, causing them to efflux out of the brain cells due to cyclotron resonance. Since these ions are the chief factor in long and short-term potentiation of synapses, the brain cell junctions, and are crucial to memory and cognition. So cognition is your ability to think, reason, and your brain work. Use of the tetra system on such a scale could cause irreversible brain damage by disturbing not only calcium ions, but sodium and potassium ions, all vital to nerve and brain function. The tetra system will also flood the New York and London Underground, so commuters will regularly be exposed to behavioural modification during rush hour. End quote. This is Channel.
Okay, so what was going on, right? So and I kind of that episode I kind of talked more about the tetra system, talked more about the CIA and UK setup of frequency based network. So I want you to imagine the UK specifically and New York, right? So New York and the UK were created so they so there was there's a web, right? So the entirety of the UK was covered in BT towers, right? BT telephone towers. And that together, that created an entire radiated system, right? So where these frequencies were continually being pumped, right? So this is was started in the 80s. And they did it in the London Underground. So even if you were underground, you were still going to get pumped full of this shit. So it was the BT towers were specifically tuned to pump out 17.5 hertz. And at 17.5 hertz, that's what happens in your brain is you go into the zombie state, which means you're pliable, right? They can direct you. They can so we were the test subjects in the UK and then they tested its effectiveness in Rwanda, right? So it's really important to understand that the structure in the UK is there, right? It's already there. So then what we had over the last 5 years is we've had 5G, which is beyond anything that we've ever kind of seen before. And the real danger from 5G is that it's multiple waves happening at the same time. So when it was 2G, it was just 2G. I mean, it's not safe, but it was just 2G. The problem with 5G is it cycles all the waves multiple times at the same time, right? So you were just being bombarded, and 5G is really interesting because I watched another a podcast of an ex I think it was ex-CIA, and he ended up working with some of the alien stuff, and 5 hertz, right? So the 5G is the thing that calls the aliens. For some reason that happens to be a frequency that attracts aliens. So it was really interesting that all of a sudden we're all now using 5G, and they knew that was a frequency which attracted aliens and UFOs and all of those things decades ago. So before they had to build towers, right? So they had to build towers and they had to completely encase the UK to just bombard everybody. They don't have to do that anymore. So every single router is its own freaking antenna, right? So this is like every single 5G. So everyone was going on about that. Oh, look, we've got a 5G tower on top of the school, right? Okay, but you've got a 5G tower inside the school. That's what the router is, right? So people would doing limited hangouts on 5G stuff, right? And so then your mobile phone is also its own like microwave antenna, right? So these are a microwave again is non-ionizing. It's that side of the spectrum. So it does fuck with you, but it just doesn't fuck with you as prolifically or as obviously or as fast, right? So it's just put it on a sliding scale. So it's really important to understand that at any point people can just be manipulated using frequency, and you can't see this, right? So this is why they keep pushing to get fluoride in the water, is because when you get fluoride in the water, you're more pliable. But you're more pliable. So you're more easily hypnotized. You're more easily manipulated into a brainwashed state, right? This is why everybody's on their phones all the time. They're on the TV, and the TV pumps out low frequencies. Your mobile phone pumps out low frequencies. And so all of these things are they're explicitly designed to be used and activated, right? So this is one of the reasons why I turn off that emergency broadcast, right? Because those sick fucks could embed a frequency into that emergency broadcast, which just sends everybody insane, right? Look at how effective they were at getting everybody to rush out to get toilet rolls when COVID didn't give you diarrhea. Like, I never understood people being desperate for toilet rolls while it was happening. I kept saying to everybody, but it doesn't give you diarrhea. Like, why do you need like an excessive amount of toilet rolls? And that was just done visually, right? They just created the fear state. When you turn on the fear state, you turn off the capacity to think and function, or you pump 17.5 hertz, and even the individuals who are not getting caught up in the bullshit, it's just a switch. It turns your brain off. So are we going to get, I think we're going to get Rwandaed pretty soon. I think that's where we're headed, right? We also have to bear in mind that they have done some research which shows, and this is not a color thing, right? This is the way research is manipulated. It has shown that people in the West have higher levels of intelligence. Okay. And what people will perpetuate is that's genetic. Well, intelligence isn't genetic. If you have access to information, then you can increase your intelligence. That's it. And so if you think about the enriched environment that we have compared to somebody who lives in a, you know, in a little village in Africa. Okay. So we have and generational. So right, so if you have parents who enrich you with information, and then it's kind of it's generational, but it's not genetic. So we have better capacity to think, to disseminate information, to discern information already, right? So it will be easier to turn on somebody's primal state if their frontal lobe is not as advanced, right? So it are all the boat jumpers, are they all evil sick fucks when they get on the boat, right? Or, I mean, some of them absolutely are, right? But are the others turned into that kind of state because they've jumped off a boat into an environment which is compounding frequency over and over and over again, right? And this brings it back to so a little bit back to what happened at Glastonbury and everybody chanting death, death, death to an IDF. Like, I want to know what frequency was being pumped out in his song, right? Were they brainwashed, right? We have to start thinking outside of what we're just being presented with and start using all the information that we've been collecting for decades. So I would say we're going Rwanda. I think they'll do Rwanda, especially as what just happened over the weekend, Russagate, right? Russagate, which is breaking news now, even though that same information was out in like 2017, 2018, right? So how everybody's like, oh, wow, look, there's a memo. Oh, wait a minute, that memo was on WikiLeaks. Oh, wow, look over here. Oh, wait a minute, yep, that information was out there. That's on this blog post over here, because otherwise I wouldn't freaking know it, right? So what did they do? So the fact that Obama and everybody's been investigated, they released a faked letter that Trump sent to Epstein, right? Obviously an op, because there's images of Trump and Epstein on the London Underground bus station route, right? So, I mean, that's obviously a fucking coincidence. I read that thing and I was like, this doesn't sound like any kind of normal conversation that anybody would have. It was just fucking weird. Anyway, so of course that's what everybody's been talking about, because nobody's been talking about the fact that they're going to be impeaching Obama, right? Because they can impeach Obama because they impeached Trump, right? I kept saying to you, it's really good they've done that, because the boomerang, everything is fucking precedent. Everything is a boomerang. And so all of the illegals being forced to stay here, that's precedence for us, right? You've got to use the court cases. They're too dumb to even consider. So they are so dumb. They believe we are too dumb to realize what's going on, right? They believe that we are too stupid to be able to go, wait a minute, you just did that thing, that now we can do that thing, right? You did that, so then now we can, right? Because it's literally precedent. So that's what this whole fake Epstein letter was about. It's so obvious that it was to just cover up the fact that the breaking news with the Russagate. I feel like I actually could have just been asleep for 5 years. Probably would have enjoyed life a little bit more if I'd just been asleep for 5 years. Like it's just like every single week. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we were speaking about this 5 years ago. But I was far more enthusiastic. I think that's what kind of shocked me the most, was like how excited I was about things. And now I'm just like, for fuck's sake, we're only going to be here another 10 years. I'll be like, yep, nope, we're still talking about Russagate. We'll see what happens. Do I think that mainstream media are going to pick up on it? I think they will do the same thing they did with Ghislaine, and they will just mention it once, and then it's gone, right? However, Trump is suing all the news outlets, so that will be interesting, but they just won't talk about it, right? This is the problem we have, is that mainstream media just don't talk about the things that they need to talk about. So while we get all excited on like X and the conversations we have, like, you then go and speak to a family member who's got no fucking idea that it's going on, and you're like, I you just can't. I mean, I want my I told you so party. It's just not happening. It's not happening. I mean, it is happening because this stuff's happening, but nobody seems to fucking know about it. The people who need to know don't know about it. It's very stressful. So for everybody who's been kind of on this journey, like this whole Russagate excitement just made me angry. It really did make me, and I know we're not supposed to be angry because we're feeding the beast, but it happened, and I was just like, I can't even, with all the people who are behaving like it's brand new breaking news, and you know that they know that it wasn't. And the people who were in their comment section who aren't even calling them out. They're just following blindly. It makes you realize that it's not just my family who have got no idea what's going on. It's even the people who are supposed to be awake, right? So I sit there and think, do you know what? I think less than 1% of the world is actually paying attention to what's going on, because everybody's just busy following people, right? They're not figuring shit out. And I know people have to work, and I know people have lives, and I know it's really busy, but it's our job to kind of keep reminding people this isn't new, this isn't breaking news, right? Just because they're now releasing the files that prove it's true, there was already a wealth of fucking evidence to prove that it was bullshit and fake and a lie. Just odd. I mean, I at some points, I believe they could frog march the entire lot of MPs in handcuffs out of Parliament, play non-stop all of the shit that they've been doing, and 95% of the population would be like, yeah, but they didn't do it though, did they? It's just some right-wing conspiracy. Like that's how I feel right now. I was far more optimistic 5 years ago. And fatter, so I'm quite I have lost weight, which is good because I'd put weight on. So that was nice to see. Okay. Just, and if you haven't watched Shadowgate, right? Let me just see if I can open it up and get you the link. Like, if you never watched Shadowgate, and that was 2020, that's when I shared it. So it was being played live, and I streamed it straight away live to all of my channels. But I was like, okay, well, let's just get this out because I think they're gonna like remove it. And I wasn't the only one who did that. Like Torrid said, like it's going up, like everybody share it everywhere. So I just kind of like streamed it straight away. So that then got me on the radar of YouTube and stuff like that. And then then they just retroactively like blacklisted me for all the other stuff that I'd done. But so that was pretty sure it was like late 2020. So you need to watch it, and then you'll be like, she fucking told, like, none of this is new. Like all of the stuff that's coming out was in that documentary, right? And I remember like for days afterwards, I went around like all the big people of all of their accounts, right? And I actually created a spreadsheet, and there was a group of us, and then we were literally dropping on the spreadsheet like whose Twitter account, whose big name Twitter would be told, which social media personality, influencer, supposedly good person? Did we say, oh my God, like you need to make sure you share this with you? And we were just like systematically banned from everywhere for sharing it because they were obviously paid. Right? So if they didn't talk about Shadowgate and they shut you down and they're talking now, please let that be the thing that finally enables you to understand that they aren't good people. They were never good people. But anybody who is behaving like Russia hoax is breaking news, you should just like fucking delete them. And if you've given them any money, demand it back, right? Demand your money back from them, because they will be getting enough money from their fucking maybe they're paid by Russia and Chinese money or whatever it was. But you need to kind of watch Shadowgate. Oh, and also, if you didn't see it, Ghislaine's, I can't remember if I said this last week. I don't know. All the last 2 weeks have been a bit of a blur with what's been going on at home. But Ghislaine's, saying that she should be paroled. She should be pardoned, which is what I'd said would happen. Right. And not because I know anything, right? This is just because I'm like, oh, right, okay, well, this is obviously the logical next step. So I'm engaging my prefrontal cortex and not relying on my emotions to kind of have me swept all over the place. So we've got a bit of Labour hypocrisy over in the UK going on. So they lowered the voting age in Scotland. And they rushed it through, right? I pay attention to what's going on in mainstream media, right? So if you're on my Telegram channel, it's RSS feeded to like the main kind of stories that they're telling us, because it enables you to see what kind of they're playing, right? And at no point has anybody been talking about votes for 16, 17-year-olds at all. Like there is no way that we would have all have missed that, right? So the day that it was announced is the day that it was rushed through and it became law, right? That's not how things happen in a fucking democracy, right? At all, right? I don't understand how people are not more outraged by the fact of that. Was it in their manifesto? I mean, I never read their manifesto, so maybe they put it in the manifesto. Was votes for 16-year in the Labour. It was in their manifesto, but it wasn't in their King's Speech. It's very fucking naughty. Anyway, so obviously, why do they want 16-year-olds? Well, they want 16-year-olds because they're still in school and still being indoctrinated, right? And they will traditionally vote left because they are stupid and they are being indoctrinated to believe communism is the thing that everybody needs, right? So that's, they're climate alarmists, like all of that stuff, right? So what have we got going on at the exact same time? The rise of Jeremy Corbyn's new party, right? So the collapse of the left, of the middle, right? The collapse of the middle is all perfectly timed. So we have the rise of the extremes, right? So we have the rise of reform, and because that was doing well, it was then infiltrated, and now there's another party and another party and another party, right? So the fact that there are multiple right-wing parties should tell you just how many people would vote for the right. Because if you only have two parties like they do on the left, it's because they don't need to split it more, right? And I said to you that we have to be really careful about the rise of the right, because there will always be a rise of the left. And then all of a sudden, we have Jeremy Corbyn's party, right? We have Jeremy Corbyn's party rise. 2 weeks later, we have the 16-year-olds who are now allowed to vote, who are traditionally psychotic left, right? Because their brain hasn't actually formed yet. And I have said for over a decade, that the vulture killers should never have been tried as adults, because of what we know about human development, what we know about brain development. So it's not about, do I believe they understood that dead means dead? Yeah, they probably did understand dead means dead, but were they in control of their faculties in the same way as an adult? Absolutely fucking not, because their brain hasn't even developed many of the things that we have as adults, right? And this isn't new. This is long-standing neuro research, right? So there are portions of the brain that don't actually really solidify and cement until like early 20s. So you're telling me we are treating a 10-year-old in the same way we treat somebody who's over 20? Get the fuck out of here, right? So I do not believe children should be tried as adults. It's the same reason why I say children can't consent to having sex or medical procedures, right? It's all wrong. That children should be children until they're 18. I still developmentally, brain developmentally, like 18 is still a bit too young. Okay. So they drop the voting age. They have to be in school until they're 18, right? So we're saying they are not allowed to marry without consent, right? They're not allowed to marry without consent, but they make a decision about murdering somebody. They're not allowed to marry without consent, but they can make a decision on whether they're having sex with somebody, whether they are changing their body so horrifically that they literally destroy the rest of their lives. So we have all that happen. And on the same time this is happening, Labour are out in force kicking off at reform for putting an 18-year-old in charge of a budget. Right? So it's not okay for an 18-year-old to be, we are saying the 18-year-old is not fiscally responsible enough to be in charge of a budget for a council. But they can have a say but somebody who's 2 years younger gets to decide who runs the country. Like, do you see the fucking hypocrisy? Oh, I can't see it all. Sorry. Down. Yeah, they are still children at 16. They are. I mean, and you only have to look back at your own childhood to realize that you were. I was a fucking idiot. Like until my 20s. Because you are, and boys more so, right? And again, this is developmental psychology. This is evolutionary psychology. This is like neurology. This is like, if everybody like trust the fucking science, why aren't we trusting the science when it counts, right? With regards to the capacity that children have to make long-term decisions, they quite literally do not have the capacity to understand the consequence of their decisions. It's just not there. It's especially missing during puberty, because traditionally that's when the young people would be out, the guys would be out hunting and gathering, right? You don't want to be thinking, I'm going to get eaten by this animal. You just need to act, right? So we know that young people have really high tolerance. Not tolerance isn't the right word. They are more likely to engage in risky behaviors because they don't actually think about the consequences of their actions. So they can comprehend the consequences, but it doesn't occur to them, right? So somebody who's 10 probably can't even comprehend the consequence of their actions, right? That's these different levels of capacity based on your age, your understanding, your experience. There is no way 16 and 17-year-olds should be voting at all. And I stand by the fact, even if we were teaching them the realities of what a party wants to do, the realities of what actually happens, right? So even if we take the complete indoctrination out of it, I still don't believe children of 16 and 17 should be able to vote. You have to make up your fucking mind. Are they adults at 16, by which time they're allowed to marry, they're allowed to get a job, they're allowed to leave school, they're allowed to get a mortgage? Like you either decide at 16 they're adults and then give them free reign, or you don't. You can't have both. I mean, they're not allowed to smoke, they're not allowed to gamble, they're not allowed to buy alcohol. Like, you don't think a child, I mean, I don't think they're allowed to drive until they're 17, right? So you can decide who runs the country, but you're not allowed to take yourself to school. Like, this is the ludicrousness of what's just happened, and was done in such a way that it was completely anti-democratic. But and this is why I kept saying to you, anybody telling you not to go out and vote, how are they good people? Because at least if you fucking turned up, maybe Labour wouldn't have had a majority. Right? If you'd have turned up and voted, maybe Labour wouldn't have had a majority. If you'd have stood if there was no Reform candidate, maybe you could have voted for an independent. So anybody telling you don't vote, and anybody telling you the courts don't work, like these people need to be, shame. Or throw vegetables at them. That's what we used to do back in the day. And I mean, obviously, I'm not condoning violence in any way, shape, or form. But I do like the idea of putting people in stocks and throwing rotten veg at them. I think we should bring back the stocks, right? Not murder. I'm not a fan of murder. Not torture, but stick them in the stocks, throw vegetables at them. I think that's a fitting punishment, and then they can go to prison for a very long time. But at least let us kind of like throw vegetables at them first. Rotten ones, so that they're squishy and gross. Yeah, I do. It's just so, it's so, I don't see how these next 6 weeks, because it's summer holidays, right? Unless something drastically happens for the good guys, right? And I mean, like, no, because things are okay, so let me reframe that. Because things are happening that are good. Okay, so we will Russagate, right? There is no way that is not going to end up with some serious fucking pushback from the baddies. And so please don't go to any of the protests. Definitely don't go to fucking Epping if you're in the UK. Because it's so easy for them to just flick a switch and start the fucking civil war. I mean, how easy would it be to just send one person in with a machete, right? Send one person in with a machete, flick a switch, and then everybody thinks they're being heroes, right? And then everybody takes to the streets, and then there's more brainwave fuckery going on. And then we'd get the blue helmets. So I haven't spoke about the blue helmets for a good few months, because we wouldn't get our military, because our military isn't here, right? Ours are non-stop abroad doing bullshit drills. They're in the Ukraine, they're abroad, right? So we would get UN blue helmets. And we'd probably get UN blue helmets from Africa, from the places that are not like our people, right? But we've also got August. Remember, we got August coming up with the next pandemic, with the WHO being in charge. So we've got all of these things going on at exactly the same time. Trump gave Putin 60 days to deal with Ukraine. So again, that's a good thing, because we're going to stop people being murdered. But it's a bad thing for the cabal, so they will be pushing back against that as well. But why isn't anybody demanding Hunter Biden's laptop gets dealt with properly? Like, there's evidence all over that of the crimes, the corruption, the big guy. Like, why isn't that being dealt with? Why isn't the Wiener laptop being dealt with? Why? And I know I said before, why hasn't Trump got rid of the law that Obama brought in that enables the USA media to spin bullshit and propaganda? And obviously, and I did say it must be because he's going to catch him in a lie. So that's what we saw, right? We saw that. But I believe if that law was reenacted, that would give the world a fighting chance, right? Because we are still in the place where the USA's media is pumping out bullshit and the rest of the world's media is reporting it like it's fact. So my family are still blind because they rely on mainstream media. And they won't go anywhere else because they think everywhere else is fake, right? So I'm hoping this is the end of the mainstream media just pumping up bullshit. And obviously we've got the BBCs and the crosshairs because they did the Gaza documentary and then all the bullshit that they've been putting out. So we're going to see the end of the BBC. Fingers crossed. But don't forget, Channel 4 are funded by the British taxpayer as well. So, okay. So, and obviously they want civil war everywhere. Like, they want world war and civil war and plagues and nuclear fallout and aliens and economic crash and weather warfare, right? All of those things is what they're using everywhere, right? So we had a thunderstorm today, so we haven't had like full storm, but we have just had like lots of drought. So that will be causing complete havoc in some places, and I'm pretty sure we will probably have floods in the UK, right? So they're doing all of the things, but just have a whatever country you're in, I want you to kind of make sure that you are looking at what's going on in your own news in the same sort of way, because everything will be kind of going in lockstep. Not necessarily, and this is what I kind of realized, is that everything does, they do enact the same level of enthusiasm for the plan across the world at the same time, but they don't always use the same thing across the same country, right? So we had full-on flooding and flash flooding and all of that in the USA, and we had droughts. And so we've both got weather issues, but they're not using the same weather issue, right? We have riots and shit happening in the UK, but for a different reason happening in the USA. So just because you are looking at what's going on in your news and you're like, oh, well, we don't have any of these freaking hotels full of immigrants, doesn't mean they're not using the same method based on something else, right? So it is economic collapse, it is civil war or world war, nuclear, weather warfare, aliens. I mean, the aliens are coming. I mean, that's what 5G is about now, obviously. Project Blue Beam, which they absolutely can do. you know, because, you know, the Queen, everybody, I don't understand why this wasn't a bigger thing than it was, right? It's only me who just keeps harping on about the fact that the Queen was a freaking hologram at her Jubilee thing, right? I don't understand. Like, that was just glossed over. Nobody went, well, where's the actual Queen, though? Like, nobody asked. Nobody asked where she was because she was dead. Wait until it comes out about MI6 and all the ex-chiefs, from Richard Dearlove to Alex Younger, UKGB Foreign Office. Wait till what comes out, Butte? I can't. I just get a blank screen. Oh, that's a. Hold on. Oh, aliens. Awesome. It won't show me the emojis on the comments, so that's why I shoved it up. You were to, yeah, you must have meant it. Yeah, I was checking the time that you mentioned it. Yeah, aliens. Oh, I know. That I think I'm just bored. And it was really interesting because back in 2021, where I, you know, was full of enthusiasm, one of my clients, she said to me, she's like, do you know what? Like, a lot of the time I just think, fuck it. I agree with the cabal because these people are too stupid. Like, they can't be saved. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's a bit harsh. Let's, you know, just give them an opportunity. You know, but she had been awake for a very, very long time due to her unique background. And so then the other day I was like, do you know what? I kind of think she was right. I'm not surprised they think we're so stupid. It's in our faces. And, you know, you just sit there thinking, I mean, I watch some of these TV shows because I like to I watch the old TV stuff. So stuff from the early 2000s to kind of like mid 2000s. And actually, I'm watching Continuum right now. It's almost finished. And that is eye-opening with what literally what they tell you. And you're just like, fuck, I did think it was all a story. So I don't believe they deserve what they get. But I do, you know, because I remember being asleep and thinking, oh, this was crazy. So I do think we need to have compassion. But I sometimes I do sit there thinking, I mean, I believe in free will, so they brought it on themselves. But, you know, I'm not gonna stop giving up. Okay, so make sure you are having a look to see kind of what's going on in your own news. I do recommend you kind of pay attention to the mainstream media because that will be them testing the water to see what, and it kind of gives you, that's how you can see what they're planning and what's coming up, right? So you've got to, as much as we don't like, and I won't watch it on the I won't actually watch it on the telly. I do just have the RSS feeds and that's enough. And you can tell what they're really pushing because every single MSM is saying the exact same thing. So I don't know whether you've seen the TV version where it's like multiple different TV channels and they're kind of all saying the exact same thing. Sometimes when you're on my Telegram page, there's like 12 news articles, all from different outlets, you know, Guardian, Telegram, BBC, all of those bullshit artists. And the headlines are exactly the same. Like, it is the exact same thing over and over again. And you're like, oh, so this is today's news story, is it? At the moment, is Nigel Farage is sending criminals to El Salvador. That's dropped from every single one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's all Nigel Farage. And they've even been drowning out the whole water thing. By the water thing is, you know, they're pushing to nationalize, and they're not nationalizing it yet. They've got a stronger agency. There's no point having like, you just need a regulator, and it needs to be written into law that it's a criminal offense for an organization to pump sewage into the water. It's a criminal offense for a company that provides national infrastructure to for it to degrade, right? That's all they need to do. They need to make it a criminal offense, and then when the regulator finds it, the regulator can hand it over to the police, and the people who are responsible are the CEOs and the board directors. You want to see how quickly shit gets done, right? It does not need to be nationalized. It just needs to be fucking accountability. That's it. If you are tasked with something which is classed as infrastructure, absolutely can be privatized, but there needs to be consequences. It should not be nationalized at all. The reason why they were all privatized was because we couldn't afford to do it as a country. It's just all bollocks. Anyway, and obviously, I don't know whether you saw or not saw, Labour is pulling the whip from people as well. So this is obviously going to stir up more people to the left, right? And I said we will start seeing extreme lefts pop up, and then 2 days later, Jeremy Corbyn was back. But the older lot will realise he is like psychopathic, but the younger lot, like, he speaks their language. I mean, the good thing is the young lot are lazy, so they might all vote online for him, but actually turn up to the fucking polls. I mean, half the time you can't even get them out of bed to go to school to do their exams, right? Because they don't understand the long-term consequences. So, I mean, am I hugely concerned? I mean, they could, if the schools start busing them to the polling stations. Well, you know, the schools are indoctrinated. So anyway, who knows what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. Learning to trust yourself. Right. Onto the feel-good factor. So the only person you can trust is you. And I said before, and I say multiple times, and I don't even like trust myself 100% because I still make mistakes, right? And that's okay, because we learn, we evolve, we move forward. Making mistakes is fine, right? As long as you learn from them. You don't want to keep making the same mistake. I'm not a robot, so I'm never going to trust myself 100%. And I will trust myself to take action based on the information that I have, but I'm not going to kind of guarantee I'm always going to make the right decision. Maybe I'll frame it like that. Outside of yourself, you shouldn't really trust anybody. And I know this is like a really controversial viewpoint, to say the least. But you don't know them. Like, you don't know what they've been through. You don't know how they feel. You don't know how they've been hardwired. So you can't trust anybody else properly. So, I mean, you can trust lots of people to that you can trust them to do the right thing. You can trust them to turn up, but you should never really rely on anybody else in order to ensure that the decisions for you are being made. So, okay, so do I trust Matt 100? Yes, I do. I don't trust him 100%, but 100%, yes, I do trust him. Right? Do I trust him to, get up in the morning? Yes, I do. Do I trust him to go to work? Yes, I do. Do I trust him to come home from work? Yes. Do I trust that he's not out there, dilly-dallying with somebody else? Yes, because he's got no time to do it. But there's lots of things I do trust about my Matt, right? And we've been together for like 24 years. So, but do I trust him to make decisions for me? No, because he's not me. He's not, he knows a lot about me. He knows my personality. He knows the good and the bad and the ugly, and he sees me at my worst and he sees me at my best, but he's not me, right? So you have to learn how to trust you, and more importantly, how to trust your instincts, right? Because your instincts are the things that will help you in sticky situations when your brain's not working, right? So this is why we're going to talk about this today, because obviously we were talking about Rwanda and frequency and how that can shut your brain down, right? So we rely on our brain and the higher order cognitive function. So that's the stuff on your prefrontal cortex. That's the thinking, reasoning. That's the stuff that's not there when you're a child. All of that stuff, we use that to try and make the best decisions for ourselves. However, we can only make decisions based on the emotional state we're in. And this is something that people don't talk about. I don't know why they don't. I mean, I think 90% of the reason they don't talk about it is because they don't understand the brain, because they're just, it's like book Christians. We have book mental health professionals, and we have book development guru, like personal development gurus. We have people who read a book and then just regurgitate information rather than going, but that doesn't make sense to my own life, right? So we can only, because it's frequency, right? So your brain waves, that's just the frequency. Your memories, your experiences, they are frequency. It's energy. It's stored in your body. This is why they use DNA as like a phenomenal energy storage, right? So on a thumb drive or USB stick, you can get like X amount of storage. You can get terabytes on a like cell, a human cell, right? Terabytes. And you couldn't on the little stick. Okay. So you can only hear, because obviously if you're making a decision, you need to hear the answer, right? You need to hear the information, or you might see the information, which whether you've got auditory or your imaginative faculties tuned in. And if you, depending on how advanced you are, you may not hear or see anything. You may just feel something, right? So feeling first is kind of like, you will feel like if it's a bad decision, you'll feel constricted and like kind of like pushed down and not good. And if it's a good decision, you'll feel like enlightened and excited and all of those things, right? So your emotions are tuned into the reality of both your 5 senses, the actual physical senses, but also the energetic senses, which kind of sit on the back of it. So this kind of goes into like psi research and all of that stuff. So we have like actual eyes, and then we have, you know, eyes that we don't see with, you know, in the pineal gland. You actually have eye cells on your pineal gland, right? So it's so you have eye cells on, so you've got inside eyes and outside eyes. Okay. I'm trying to do it in words that anybody, regardless of their background, can kind of understand. But I know it then sounds crazy when you say you've got eye cells, but that's, I mean, that's the official terminology, right? You have time cells in your head as well, like literal cells who dictate and respond to time. And mine don't work. Which is fine. So you've got all these different types of cells in your brain. So you have eye cells, you have, you know, you can hear stuff outside, but also if you talk to yourself, you can hear yourself on your inside, right? So if you are very tuned in to your intuition and you've been using it and relying on it and trusting it, then you will be getting answers really kind of quickly. So every time I ask a question, I get an answer really quickly. And I do auditory. And when I ignore the answer, I get shouted at. And by shouting, I mean like it's really fucking loud in your head. And you should talk to yourself because you want to build some kind of capacity to actually access the information you need to succeed, right? It would take me a while to decipher an image. But if you're very artistic, you are going to see have enhanced imaging faculties, right? I talk a lot, so I obviously got lots of voice ones. The voices in my head. So your emotions it will be telling you what's going on, right? Whether it's a good decision or a bad decision. And so the emotions can't give you that much information. So you have to develop further senses. You have to develop either a voice or your imaging faculty, right? So the best way to develop your imaging faculty is, take up some kind of art-based hobby. So whether that's photography or drawing or sculpting or painting, whatever it is that enables you to get really, really good at developing images in your mind's eye, right? So you'll need to develop that side of things. If you are not very arty, I mean, you can learn to be arty. It's just a skill. You just have to like apply yourself. Some people do have a natural talent, but everybody else can learn. It's not like some people can draw and then everybody else just can't. It's just some people just need practice. Okay, so I mean, some people might not be able to because if they've got like brain issues, but other than that, you can learn. So if you don't enjoy, right, if you don't enjoy art stuff, then you will really struggle to develop the skill because you won't enjoy doing it. Okay, so then you may want to develop your auditory sight skills, and mine are there. I never like trained it, but I do. And I have always had kind of conversations with myself. And a lot of the time I'd have conversations with myself was because if I had conversations with other people, like it was just like, it would be like bullied and shit. So you don't tend to really talk to other people. And even, I wouldn't talk to people. So you just have conversation. I was always having conversations in my head. Should I do this thing? Maybe I shouldn't do this thing. What's the good thing about this thing? What's the bad thing about this thing? And so the other way that you can develop your inside voice is by, just ask questions, like write it, and then just free write whatever comes next, right? So get used to trusting what you're saying. And then the next step is to make sure that you take the actions, right? So the amount of times I hear, and this is where precognition comes in, right? And this is where the more you start to develop these skills, the more capacity you have to course correct your life before the shit hits the fan. And this is, I mean, it's not always with like big stuff. It can be like little stuff. So, an example of where, and if you look into the precognition stuff, I mean, yes, you can go onto the CIA website and look up, Stargate, Grill Flame, Ingo Swan, like all of those kind of remote viewing, all of that sort of stuff. Can show you some of the experiments the CIA were doing, but then there's just a wealth of research since then. That was like 70s, and to be fair, there was a wealth of research before then because the CIA were late to the party. So the real advancements and development and understanding was in Russia and in Europe in the late 1900s. Late 1800s, early 1900s. That's where like huge kind of investigations into paranormal stuff and people's psychic capacity and abilities. And yes, there were charlatans. There were always charlatans. But so we have, and there's really well documented stuff around precognition. So I think there were people talking about, and you have to be careful when people are. So there's a video going round of a lady who was predicting the stuff that was going on in Texas 2 days before it happened, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And then I did some digging, and I found out that people were being told for days beforehand to evacuate because they believed there was going to be like flooding, right? So I want to know, just teeny tiny aside, I want to know why the families didn't evacuate the kids, because there's video evidence of saying like we were there from before it happened. That's not because they were the ones who were responsible for it happening, but they were actually putting warnings out days before. So the woman saying, well, I'm kind of predicting this, that, the other. Do I necessarily believe her? Well, probably not. Because people were being told, right? So it depends what kind of chatter you're on. I mean, if you were watching the weather kind of stuff, it's very easy to predict it. Anyway, but there's lots of stuff with regards to precognition. There's a really famous case with regards to a coal mine and a school I think it was in Wales. So it's in the UK, where the kids of this school were having for weeks beforehand, and it wasn't just the kids of the school, there was also people like around the globe were having dreams and visions of the silt kind of collapsing into a school and all these kids being killed. And it was being reported, like people were talking about it, and people were writing letters to each other going, oh my God, I had this horrific dream. And obviously they only kind of collated all the information afterwards, but there was like a wealth of evidence that in the weeks and months preceding this huge mass event, people were able to see it, right? And that's because time isn't linear, and we have a capacity to jump onto the super conscious highway where all the information stored, because everything's just energy and all of that stuff, right? So the concept of precognition isn't some sci-fi woo-woo thing. It's like, it's real. And you can use it for good. But you have to start trusting, right? So this is where I'm kind of learning to trust yourself. If you start training your faculties, whether you're going to go down I'm going to do like arty stuff route, or whether you're going to start talking to yourself, and you kind of prime talking to yourself by writing to yourself and kind of like question and answer sessions. When you start seeing stuff, or when you start hearing stuff, it is your responsibility to then take action, right? So I'm going to give you some examples of where I have and I haven't. So, I mean, I'm better now that if I just hear random voices telling me to do something, I will just, even if it sounds bonkers, I would just do it, because I've felt the ramifications of not. So an example of me ignoring my advice, right? So a couple of years ago, I was going to take the dogs for a walk and then walk them down to the shops and get like little bits from the shops. And as I was locking the front door, because we go out the back door, because the front door's got steps, we go out the back door and out the back gate. Like I just had this like, I had my bank card in my hand, and I was kind of like locking the door and packing my like rucksack so I could put the food in the rucksack so I didn't have to carry it. And I put the rucksack on my back, and I had like this kind of like voice, like kind of saying along the lines of, you should put your bank card in your rucksack, right? And I had it in my hand, and I was like, oh, I can't be asked to take it off. I'll just put it in my pocket. So I did the opposite. And then I got to the shop and I went to pay, and I didn't have my bank card. And so then I had to backtrack the entire 30-40 minute walk to try and find my bank card, right? And I was getting really frustrated on the field, because I was like, it must be on the field, because this is when I was like throwing things for the dogs. There's no other reason it would have fallen out. And so I was like, right, fine. I just like in the middle of this field, in the middle of the day, I was like, fine, I didn't listen. I'm a dick, but at least help me find the card, right? If you can tell me in advance, put that in your bag, Katie, because you're going to lose it, because it's you. This is what you do. You lose things, especially when you're stressed and you're busy, you will lose things. And so then I just like took a deep breath. And I was just like, okay, to tell me where to go. And I just followed my intuition and I found it. Right? It's insane when you're talking about this stuff, but this is why you got to do it. And so then I was able to go back to the shops. I mean, the dogs loved it. They got like a really long walk. I went back to the shops, I bought the food, and then I came back. Okay. So that was the last time I kind of ignored the voice, because it was like, I'm just not going through that shit again. Right. I'm just not. The other day I was told to, so I put stuff on the stairs, right? So this sounds really dangerous. But if I'm downstairs and cleaning up, I'll put something on the stairs. So then the next time I'm going up the stairs, I will kind of take it up the stairs. But obviously that doesn't always happen, because sometimes the next time I'm going up the stairs, I've got like, a cup of tea and something else in my hand. And so I was going up the stairs and there was something on the stairs to go up, and I didn't have the kind of actual physical hand capacity to do it. And as I was getting to the stairs, I was like, oh, well, it'll be fine. And I heard a voice in my head saying, no, you need to come back and get this. But you need to put this away. So I went back up the stairs. I put the things away down that I had. And then I went down the stairs and I picked it up. And I'm pretty sure, had I not done that, I'd have probably tripped on it, slipped on it, or maybe Matt would have slipped on it. Like some bad thing would have happened. But I'm not in the mood to be like testing stuff anymore. I'm told to do something and I do it. But you will be surprised by the random things you get told to do right in advance. But so have a look into precognition, because people like have saved their own lives by they're about to step into a road and they hear like the word shouting like stop and no, and they turn around and there's like nobody there, and then a car goes past, right? Literally. So it's fascinating stuff. So this is going to be really important, because once you start building your trust faculty, once you start building your intuition and start learning to trust your intuition, you are more likely to be able to not get swept up in the psyops and the bullshit, right? Because there will be a disconnect between what your head is trying to do and what your emotions are trying to do, and so you will start to feel the disconnect. So if I watch, people send me shit all the time. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it. By the way, guys, that came out incorrectly. I'm grateful for the stuff that you send me. However, sometimes I'm like, there's a reason why I don't talk about this person. And then sometimes I'm like, I've literally told people like multiple times this person is a bad person, so I'm just not going to watch that. And so the reason how I decided who's worth my time and energy was based on my intuition. And so far, it hasn't kind of led me astray. I mean, I don't trust anyone, so that's the premise to start from. And don't trust me either, right? And I said this over and over again. You don't know me, you're not me. I know that I'm good people, but you don't know I'm good people. I could be like just telling you bullshit. So that's what I'm saying. Like go and look into. I'm going to give you some advice of where you can go and look, and some names of people you can go and vet the information. This is what everybody should be doing. Going and vetting any information. We should not be trusting other people on blind faith, but you need to learn how to build your own trust muscle so that you can start paying attention to what's true for you, right? So my journey is different to your journey. The people who I resonate with may be different to the people who you resonate with. And it may be because we're at different places in our journey, right? So years ago, I may have been fooled by some of the people who are fooling people now. So say, for example, they're trying to rewrite history with regards to Nigel Farage, saying, because he's come out talking about COVID and the vaccine, and all of the MPs in the UK knew because we fucking hounded them nonstop, right? And when it comes to Nigel Farage, let's not forget, he was pushing for Tony Blair to be in charge of the vax rollout, and he was pushing for like digital ID with regards to the vax pass. So like, this is not even that long ago, and people are having history rewritten in front of, like, literally in front of their eyes. So that's where logic comes in. So if you are watching something and you feel hinky, right? Something they say doesn't resonate with you, doesn't always mean that you need to kind of write the entire person off. Just do some research. And it's so easy nowadays. I mean, it's harder because, you know, the bad people own the search engines. Go to archive.org, right? If you want to find out what's really going on, go to archive.org and then look at the stuff from the 1800s, like late 1800s, early 1900s. This is why when they'd like do breaking new science stuff, and I was like, I read about that from like 1829, so it ain't that brand new, mate. I literally just read a book talking all about that and how they discovered that 120 years ago. Do you want to try again, ripping somebody else's work off? But that's where I go to archive.org. I will watch a few things and I will have stuff kind of whizzing around my head for a while, and only when maybe multiple different sources have said something similar, then I may integrate it. But it's really interesting because usually I have the solution, and I don't know whether this is okay. So this is something you hear quite a lot from people who have dyslexia and dyscalculia, is you will have the solution and you've got no idea how, like, where the solution came from and how. So usually I will ask a question, or I'll be thinking about something, I will get an answer, and then it takes like a few months for me to kind of find the proof, right? And that answer always happens to be the thing, and it's not because I'm hunting for it, right? So I'm not hunting for the evidence to back it up. That's because that's the wrong way to do it. I'm usually very skeptical. I'm like, well, that seems a bit fucking like a strange answer to go out of the woodworks there, Kate. But then multiple different things will say the same thing. So, for example, what we've spoken about recently was the idea about the Septuagint and Moses not it all actually only being 200-300 years before Christ, rather than like lots of years, as though it's initially peddled, right? So I wasn't looking for those bits of information at all. They just happened to be mentioned or by multiple different people with completely different disciplines, completely off the beaten track, found the same conversion of information. And then I'm going to go, okay, so there's got to be something to this then. I think the mistake most people make is one person says something and then that's it, that's gospel. You can't do it off one person. And even if you have the solution, genuinely don't hunt for it. Just allow the information to flow. This is the best thing about social media, whether that's blogging, vlogging, or, you know, actual, you know, traditional social media, is the answers will just flow to you. Like out of nowhere. If I ask a question, and I know nowadays, I know now they're listening, right? But you can kind of like ask a random. Okay, so when I'm saying and I ask a question, I'm not necessarily asking the question out loud. I'm not kind of going to my phone, hello, can I have a new pair of tights, please? And then, you know, all of a sudden there's tights everywhere. I mean, like, you know, you kind of like think of something within a couple of days, you can have manifested multiple different things along that vein that you were considering. So you don't even have to say it out loud. And do I think they're in our heads? Probably. But I also believe that we're all connected. It's all energy anyway, right? So the information's out there somewhere, but you don't need to hunt for it. Allow it to come to you. just allow. So I had a business coach like years ago, and she kept saying to me, you need to stop acting, you need to just start allowing information to percolate excuse me, in your mind. And so I always have that in the back of my head. I'm just going to have these things percolate for a little bit and then just see what happens, because I'm an action taker, and that just gets me into a lot of trouble. I do lots of backtracking. Try not to backtrack quite so much. So have fun building your psychic capacity with regards to trusting yourself, right? This is not about becoming a psychic spy or learning to remote view. I mean, all of that stuff will is a natural evolution should you want to, but you need to be able to know that the information you're seeing is true. You need to be able to build the skills that enable you to navigate in the very difficult world that we're in, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. I do believe this is a long-term war, and we've probably got another 20 years. I don't mean to be putting like a dampener on it, but this is just like, if you just think about things logistics wise, with the sheer number of corrupt individuals, like with different levels of corruption and bribery, in the UK alone, it will be hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million people, right? And then we've got all the decades of brainwashing and indoctrination needs to be undone. We've got all the legislation. Thanks, Dan. We've got all the legislation that needs to be rewritten. So it's not. I hope it's not 20 years of psychological torture and trauma, but it may be. Right now we're not in the place of some other countries who are, yet, thankfully, we're not there yet, where we're not being rounded up and mass murdered. I mean, they're getting close, but we're not there yet. It won't ever be a quick fix. And if it is a quick fix, it's because it's not true. Because that's what's happened multiple times in our past, is we've just been placated, right? Been placated. They just regime change. It just dethrone a king and you get a parliament, right? Get rid of the church and you get government. So we're easily placated, and we need to make sure that the future is not a repeat of what's happened over and over and over again. And the only way we're going to do that is by doing it properly and embedding it into people. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. Have yourselves an amazing rest of your week, and I shall see you back here at 7 o'clock next week for some more Madness and Mayhem. And who knows, maybe we've got like a perp walk story. That'll be exciting. So I'm holding out for the first arrest will shock the world. I mean, it's Hillary and Podesta, the first two, right, on the keyboard. But and obviously that's all done. It just needs to be like in the public eye, right? So we'll see. Like, we can pray for love and peace, and that's what we manifest. So have an amazing week, and I shall see you next week. Bye for now.